Somewhere right now, someone on a plane just flushed the toilet and thought, does this just fall out of the sky? And look, that's not even a stupid question. Because for most of aviation history, it basically did. Pilots literally dumped containers out of open cockpits. Bomber crews in World War II sat on glorified porta-potties that regularly exploded their contents across the fuselage during evasive maneuvers. The fact that your flush at 35,000 feet doesn't rain down on someone's backyard is actually the result of one of the most underappreciated engineering solutions in modern aviation. Let's rewind for a second. Before the 1930s, most airplanes didn't even have a bathroom. If you had to go, you grabbed a container. And if you were the pilot in an open cockpit, you just dumped it over the side. Hope nobody was having a picnic below. By World War II, things had technically improved. British bombers like the Lancaster and Halifax carried chemical toilets, essentially metal buckets with a lid and some blue disinfectant called Elsons. American B-17 crews had it even worse, often just a relief tube and whatever container they could improvise. And here's the thing about all of these solutions. They were hated by every single person who ever encountered them. Crews wore layers of heavy flight gear in freezing temperatures. The toilet sat in the back of the fuselage, fully exposed, no walls, no privacy. And every time the pilot took evasive action, which during a bombing run over Germany was constantly, the bucket tipped over and covered everyone nearby in its contents. Air crews described it as, quote, one of the true reminders that war is hell. Most crew members gave up on the Elson entirely. They urinated into bottles. They used cardboard boxes. Some threw those boxes out of the aircraft mid-flight. One crew reportedly peed into their aircraft's hydraulic system when it was losing fluid, just to keep it running. For decades, the aviation toilet situation was not great. Sloshing chemicals, corroding aircraft, frozen waste leaking from fuselages. Something had to change. And in 1975, it did. A guy named James Kemper filed a patent that basically said, stop using water, stop using chemicals, stop fighting gravity. Instead, just let the airplane do the work. Use the pressure difference that already exists between the inside of the cabin and the outside air, and let physics flush the toilet for you. That one idea changed everything. Here's what happens when you press that flush button at 35,000 feet. A valve opens at the bottom of the toilet bowl. That valve connects the bowl to a pipe that leads to a sealed waste tank, usually near the back of the plane. And here's the clever part. The cabin around you is pressurized. The air is being actively kept at a comfortable pressure so you can breathe. But the waste tank? It's connected to the outside of the aircraft where the pressure is dramatically lower. So the moment that valve opens, air rushes from high pressure to low pressure. And it takes everything in the bowl with it. Fast. Really fast. That's the whoosh. That's not a pump, that's not a motor, that's physics doing what physics does. Moving stuff from high pressure to low pressure. Your airplane is essentially a giant vacuum cleaner, and the flush just opens the nozzle. Now, this only works perfectly above about 16,000 feet, where the pressure difference between the cabin and the outside air is large enough to create strong suction. Below that altitude, during takeoff, landing, or while the plane is sitting at the gate, an electric vacuum pump kicks in to do the same job mechanically. The system switches between the two automatically. You never notice. The reason this system was revolutionary wasn't just that it worked, it's that it solved about 5 problems at once. First, weight. Your toilet at home uses about 1.6 gallons of water per flush. Older ones? Up to 7. On an airplane, every ounce of weight burns fuel. The vacuum system uses a tiny amount of liquid per flush, just 6 to 8 ounces of rinse water and disinfectant. No heavy water tanks sloshing around. Second, space. Because the system uses suction instead of gravity, the pipes can be tiny, about 2 inches in diameter compared to 4 inches for a standard gravity-fed system. And they can run in any direction, even upward. You don't need to put the toilet directly above the waste tank. You can route the plumbing wherever it fits. Third, reliability. Boeing's vacuum lavatory systems have logged tens of millions of flight hours. The whole mechanism is just a valve, a pipe, and a pressure difference. There's almost nothing to break. And fourth, and this is the one nobody thinks about, odor. The old chemical systems had the waste sitting in a tank right under the toilet. The vacuum system seals everything away instantly. The bowl is empty and clean in about 3 seconds. That's why airplane bathrooms don't smell nearly as bad as they could. And trust me, with several hundred people on a long-haul flight, they absolutely could. So here's the part that might ruin flying for you a little bit. That waste doesn't go anywhere during the flight. It just sits there, in a sealed tank in the belly of the aircraft. Every flush from every passenger for the entire duration of the flight is collecting in one place. On a fully loaded wide-body jet on a long-haul route, that tank can hold around 50 gallons of waste. You are quite literally flying through the sky with the combined bathroom output of a couple hundred strangers stored directly beneath your feet. When the plane touches down, a ground crew arrives with what the industry lovingly calls a honey wagon, a specialized truck that connects to a port on the outside of the aircraft and pumps out the entire waste tank. The contents get taken to the airport's sewage treatment facility. Same destination as your toilet at home, just a slightly more dramatic route to get there. And no, despite the myth, none of this gets dumped mid-flight. Modern aircraft have no mechanism to release waste in the air. Pilots can't do it. Nobody can. The tank is sealed and the service panel is only accessible from the outside of the aircraft on the ground. But, and you knew there was a but, there is one scenario where airplane toilet waste does end up on the ground before landing. It's called blue ice. If a waste tank develops a leak, a cracked seal, a faulty valve, the liquid seeps onto the outside of the aircraft. At cruising altitude, temperatures drop well below -40 degrees. The waste freezes instantly, forming a chunk of ice on the fuselage. The blue color comes from the disinfectant chemicals in the system. As the plane descends into warmer air, that chunk can break free and fall. And over the years it has. Chunks of blue ice have crashed through roofs, damaged cars, and in one case in India in 2018, villagers initially mistook a fallen piece for a meteorite. Now, this is rare, extremely rare. Modern aircraft waste systems are sealed and regularly inspected. But the fact that it happens at all is a reminder that even the cleverest engineering has edge cases. So the next time you're in that tiny airplane bathroom wedged between the wall and the sink, and you press that flush button, and that unholy whoosh scares the life out of you, just know this. What you're hearing is the sound of a pressure difference between your cabin and the atmosphere outside doing in 3 seconds what your toilet at home does in 12, using almost no water, through pipes thinner than your wrist, into a sealed tank that will hold everything until a guy in a truck called a honey wagon pumps it out on the ground. It took humanity about 80 years of open cockpits, exploding buckets, and frozen waste falling from the sky to get here. And honestly, the solution turned out to be embarrassingly simple. Stop fighting physics. Let the airplane do the flushing. I want to know. What's the worst airplane bathroom experience you've ever had? Long-haul flight, turbulence, questionable smells, the works? Drop it in the comments. I'll read every single one.